Welcome to this deep dive into, well, a truly atmospheric and just unforgettable song. The Doors' Riders on the Storm,
Yeah, it's the last track on LA Woman, their 1971 album.
and famously the last song Jim Morrison actually recorded with them. It's just this incredible mix, isn't it? The
Mm.
rain, the thunder sounds, those jazzy keys.
Oh, absolutely. And those lyrics, so poetic, it really creates a mood.
So our mission today is to, peel back those layers. We want to dig into the meaning, the symbols, what critics thought, and the whole backstory of how it came about.
Exactly. We've pulled together quite a bit of material, interviews, articles, analyses to really try and understand this track.
Okay, let's jump right in. That opening. Into this house we're born. Into this world we're thrown. Wow, it just hits you, doesn't it? There's a real weight there.
It really does. Straight away, it plunges you into this core existential idea. Philosophers call it Geworfenheit or thrownness.
Thrown.
Yeah, the feeling of being thrown into existence without any choice, without a rule book. You're just here.
Right, like you've been dropped into the middle of something already happening.
Precisely. And Morrison, remember, he studied philosophy in college, so he likely knew exactly the concept he was tapping into. It sets up this feeling of, a lack of control that kind of hangs over the whole song.
It's pretty deep stuff for a rock song,
Hmm.
but it works so well. And that feeling carries on, right? With lines like a dog without a bone, an actor out on loan.
Those lines really paint a picture of feeling rootless, don't they? Like you don't quite belong, or maybe your whole life is just this temporary role you're playing.
An actor out on loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
It is. And, it's interesting because some thinkers, like Ernst Bloch, kind of pushed back against just accepting this throne state passively.
Yeah, so.
Well, Bloch emphasized that we still have the potential to, shape our lives, to find meaning. So seeing that line, like a dog without a bone, through his lens highlights this feeling of lacking purpose, or maybe lacking the drive to find purpose, which Bloch would argue against. It adds another dimension.
So it's not just being here without choosing, it's also about what you do once you're here. That lack of direction.
Exactly. And this idea of being alone on your journey, that seems central to the chorus, Riders on the Storm. What does that image bring up for you?
Well, literally, people driving through bad weather. But metaphorically, yeah, like everyone is just trying to get through life's challenges, the unpredictable stuff.
Spot on. It becomes this symbol for the whole human condition. We're all these riders navigating the storm of life, dealing with things we can't control, fate, death, all of it.
And then, the song takes a really dark cinematic turn. There's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad. I mean, that imagery is just chilling.
It is, and there's a very real, very grim story behind it.
I heard about this. It wasn't just something Morrison made up.
No, he was drawing partly on the true story of a guy named Billy Cook. He was a hitchhiker in the 1950s who, well, he killed an entire family who picked him up. Horrifying stuff.
God, that's awful.
Yeah. And that story was actually turned into a film noir called The Hitchhiker back in '53. Morrison seemed to be pulling from both the real events and the film.
And that line, if you give this man a ride, sweet family will die. That feels so direct, almost like a warning from that time.
It practically is. It captures the fear surrounding Cook. Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist, even called the song a very filmic song about a serial killer. You really hear that suspense building.
Yeah, you do. Does knowing about Billy Cook change how you hear the rest of it, the more symbolic parts?
That's a great question. I think it adds this layer of tangible danger. The storm isn't just metaphorical anymore. It's the backdrop for real physical peril. It makes you feel more vulnerable stuck out there on that dark road.
But then right in the middle of all that darkness, you get the bridge. Girl, you gotta love your man. Take him by the hand. Make him understand. It's such a shift in tone.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it? It feels like this sudden plea for connection, for love, as a kind of refuge from the storm and the killer.
Like an anchor.
Exactly. Many people think this part reflects Morrison's own relationship with Pamela Corson. It's like saying, okay, the world is dangerous and chaotic, but maybe love, maybe understanding each other offers some kind of salvation, some way to endure. Maybe even suggesting our life will never end through that connection.
So there's this tension playing out. The darkness of the killer versus this hope found in love. Like you said, almost the hitchhiking serial killer defeated by love.
Yeah, something like that. It acknowledges the fear, the existential dread, but it doesn't completely give in. It holds out for that redemptive possibility in human bonds.
Okay, so let's circle back to the title itself, Riders on the Storm. It really feels like the key metaphor tying it all together.
It absolutely does. We are the writers, life is the storm. Simple, but incredibly evocative.
And it started, believe it or not, from them jamming on Ghost Riders in the Sky, that old country western tune.
Yeah, apparently. You can kind of hear a faint echo of that spooky mythic feel maybe in the keyboard line, but they obviously took it somewhere completely new.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Morrison's writers aren't ghosts. They're us, living people caught in both literal and symbolic storms.
And the storm itself, the rain, the thunder, it's practically another character in the song, right? It's not
Yeah.
just background noise. It emphasizes the danger, our
Yeah.
smallness against these big forces.
Definitely. The whole thing is just so poetic and dark. It really pulls you into that world.
And that ending,
Mm.
where Morrison's voice just fades out, whispering, "Riders on the storm," over and over.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
It leaves you with this feeling of solitude, mystery.
Yeah, both. Like the rider is continuing on alone into the fading storm. It's such a perfect, haunting finish.
So it's no surprise critics and scholars have had a lot to say about this track over the years.
Not at all. It's widely seen as this masterpiece of mood and meaning. Critics often point to that blend of rock music with, like, a film noir sensibility.
Manzarek's filmic comment again.
Exactly. It's been called a mini psychological thriller. People talk about its hypnotic quality. It just draws you in.
Some have even called it the Doors' definitive artistic statement. That's saying something.
It's a huge claim, but you can see why. The way it weaves together narrative, mood, and those deeper philosophical questions is pretty unique.
And when scholars dig in, they often come back to those existential themes we talked about, especially that Heidegger connection.
Right, that Geworfenheit, the thrownness. Philosopher Thomas Calmer wrote about how Into This World We're Thrown is almost a perfect lyrical expression of that concept.
It's pretty amazing that a rock lyric resonates on that level. I read that another philosopher, Simon Critchley, actually used the line in a newspaper column to explain Heidegger.
Yeah, it shows how effectively Morrison captured that complex idea. It
Yeah.
transcends just being a song lyric, you know?
And what about the dog without a bone line again? You mentioned Ernst Bloch earlier.
Right. So scholars looking at it through Bloch's ideas see that line as highlighting this passive acceptance of being thrown, this lack of agency or direction. Bloch argued we should resist that, strive to make something of our existence. So the lyric becomes a description of a state Bloch would critique.
Okay, I see. So these interpretations really push the song beyond just a story about a killer or a storm. It's about the human condition itself.
Precisely. It taps into that deeper existential angst.
When it's impossible, really, to talk about this song without thinking about Morrison himself, especially where he was in his life when they recorded it.
Absolutely. Many hear it as a kind of swan song, reflecting his own mindset as his life was nearing its end.
That melancholy, eerie vibe. It feels connected to his own struggles and perhaps a sense of decline.
It's hard not to feel that. The whole sound, especially those whispered vocals at the end, feels almost ghostly, like a voice fading out.
And him singing Our Life Will Never End. The timing is just tragic, isn't it, knowing he died so soon after?
It gives the line this incredibly poignant, almost spectral quality in hindsight, like he's reaching for immortality right before the end.
Yeah. It feels like the song captures that contradiction in him, the fatalism, the awareness of death, but also this romantic desire for life, for connection, to somehow transcend it all.
Beautifully put. And musically, its legacy is undeniable. It's always high up on lists of the Doors' best songs, or even best rock songs ever.
And its influence pops up elsewhere too, right? Didn't it inspire a movie?
Yeah, the 1986 horror film The Hitcher definitely channels that same dark roadside danger vibe.
Interesting. And some even see it as a forerunner to Gothic rock.
That's been suggested. You can certainly hear elements in its mood and atmosphere that would resonate later in the goth scene. It just proves how layered it is, musically and lyrically, still being picked apart today.
Danny Sugerman, who worked with the band, said something great about Morrison's talent.
Oh yeah, he talked about Jim's unique ability to fuse literature and cinema within rock music, and Riders on the Storm is maybe the ultimate example of that, a song you can interpret on so many levels.
Okay, let's zoom in a bit more on the actual time it was made. The LA Women Sessions, late 1970. What was going on with the band then?
Well, it was a pretty charged time. As we said, it was close to the end for Morrison. He was apparently quite restless, worn down by fame, the legal fallout from the Miami incident.
Right, the obscenity trial. That must have taken a huge toll.
For sure. And his drinking had reportedly increased. But alongside that, he was also really focused on his poetry, even talking about quitting the band. So you get this mix of weariness and introspection.
And you feel that in the song, that kind of world-weary existential mood.
Definitely. Now, the specific origin, as we touched on, was that jam based on ghostwriters in the sky.
Kind of a surprising starting point.
A little bit, yeah. But Morrison took that initial spark and wove in the much darker threads, the Billy Cook story, the hitchhiker movie. The road was always a powerful symbol for him, representing both freedom and danger.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme in their music.
And one writer, Jack Watley, said Morrison was kind of pulling back the curtain on the romantic myth of the outlaw, showing the grim reality underneath.
But it wasn't all dark, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Pamela Corson.
Yes, Manzarek felt strongly that the tender parts, the Love Your Man section, were directly inspired by Jim's relationship with Pam. It was about finding that human anchor amidst the chaos.
So you have this really potent mix. The personal, vulnerable stuff right next to this bleak, true crime-inspired narrative.
Which really seems to reflect Morrison's own complex psyche at the time, the poet and the provocateur, the lover and the lone wolf.
And the recording itself, that happened at the Doors' own studio, right? The workshop.
Yeah, in December 1970. And it was during these sessions that their longtime producer, Paul Rothchild, actually walked out.
Why was that?
He apparently heard an early version of another song on the album and dismissed it as cocktail music. Big clash of vision.
Wow. So what happened then?
The band decided to carry on without him, co-producing the album with their engineer, Bruce Botnick, which, maybe gave them more freedom to pursue their own instincts, like with writers.
And that led to things like Morrison whispering the lyrics, that famous story.
Exactly. That was Morrison's idea. Apparently, after laying down the main vocal, he wanted this eerie, layered effect. They say he might have even done it in the studio bathroom for the natural reverb.
Huh. Whatever works. And it totally does work. It gives it that spooky, detached feeling.
It really does. And then you've got Manzarek's Fender Rhodes, that watery, descending riff. He was deliberately trying to mimic the sound of rain falling.
Incredible. Every element seems designed to pull you into that specific scene, that stormy highway.
Absolutely. All the production choices served the song's atmosphere. By the time they finished it, they knew they had something special.
And it ended up being the closing track on L.A. Woman. A pretty moody way to end the album.
Very much so. And then, of course, the context shifted dramatically.
Yeah.
Morrison moved to Paris in March 71, and then he died there in July, just 27.
And the single, Riders on the Storm, was released in June, just before he died.
Yeah, and it was climbing the charts right when the news broke. It was just incredibly eerie timing. It felt almost prophetic.
Imagine hearing Into This World We're Thrown on the radio right after learning he was gone. The rain sounds, the fading whisper.
It must have felt like his ghost was literally saying goodbye. It cemented the song's legendary status almost immediately.
And the title itself became iconic. Densmore used it for his book title.
Right. It just perfectly encapsulates Morrison's whole persona, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The existential loneliness, the dark romance, the fascination with danger, and the journey. That lone figure heading into the unknown.
Manzarek said Jim was way ahead of his time, making a rock song that felt so much like a film.
And he really was. Riders works on so many levels. It's a story, it's a metaphor, it's a mood piece, it's a glimpse into Morrison's soul.
So wrapping things up, Riders on the Storm is just, it's immense. It covers so much ground, existence, fear, love, the human journey, all wrapped in this unforgettable soundscape.
Yeah, it's deeply tied to Morrison's own life and end, but speaks to these universal themes too. That haunting sound, those poetic words, they just stay with you.
And maybe that's the final thought for you listening. How does that mix of the deeply personal Morrison's own world and these big universal ideas make Riders on the Storm still feel so powerful today? What kind of storms resonate with you on your own journey?
Definitely something to think about. We really encourage you to keep exploring the Doors' music, maybe check out Morrison's poetry, or even look into some of those philosophical ideas we touched on.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.